People are always asking me when I decided to become a priest. And they're usually rather astonished when I tell them I knew that I was supposed to be a priest when I was 7 years old, 7.5 actually. And it shows you the power of the media, because my vocation was intimately linked with the movie Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. In those days, there was no television, so when little children went to the movies the first time, it was a big event because they saw moving pictures for the first time. And I was enthralled. And if you remember, in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the witch is very, very wicked, very, very nasty, frightening. It happened at that time I went to school in Jersey City, down near a big street, shopping street, a business street. And the sister who taught us in the 2nd grade, a wonderful holy woman named Sister Teresa, went out every day out of the convent after school with a tray or a box, out of which came steam in the wintertime, obviously something hot. And I was so intrigued that I followed her. And she went into a tenement house right near the school on this busy street, West Side Avenue. And so the next time I had to get a haircut, I went to the barber shop on the bottom floor. The barber's name was Giuseppe. And I got up into the barber chair, I can see it now, and I said, Giuseppe, why does the sister come here every day? And he said to me, she's to take care of the old lady. And I said, why? She said, very sick. I said, where does she live? On the top of floor. So I went around the back, went up the fire escape. We had wooden fire escapes. It was like a porch, went up, all the way up to the top floor, pulled over the milk box, climbed up on the milk box, looked in the window, and right there was the face of the wicked witch. She was looking right at me about 4 inches away. I can still feel the fright. I jumped off the milk box, ran down the fire escape, ran up the street into the Church of Our Lady of Victory, knelt down in front of the statue of Our Lady. I can still see the blue candles, terrified, praying, because I saw a witch. And you know what happened to Snow White. And while I was there, I said to myself, how is it that the witch doesn't kill Sister Teresa? And I said, maybe it's because she's nice to her. Maybe if people were nicer to witches, they wouldn't be so bad. And something inside of me said, be a priest. I said, okay. I was going to be a fireman, so I'll be a priest. And I went out of the church and I looked at the rectory, which was a rather grim-looking rectory. And I said to myself, I got to live in that place. And the housekeeper was an old Irish woman who was grouchy. I got to live in that grouchy house. I thought the housekeeper was the priest's wife, because I didn't know anything about priests not getting married. The priest was a rather charming soul named Father Tom O'Donnell, an Irishman who wore a straw boater in the summer. And I thought, I got to wear one of those dumb-looking hats. So I went home somewhat discouraged that I had to be a priest. And in the 3rd grade, another sister, Sister Consolata, gave me a plaque, and she wrote on the back of it, Ora pro me. And my father said, why did she write it in Latin? I said, I don't know. So I went back and I said, my father wants to know why you wrote it in Latin. And she said, because you're going to be a priest. And I have never stopped in those many, many years. This is almost 60 years ago. I never once thought of being anything else. Never once. I'm not very original. When I was 12, I read a marvelous poem by Longfellow, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, the great American poet, about a monk who had a vision of Christ, a poem called The Legend Beautiful. And he didn't know what to do because he's in charge of the poor, and he had to go to the door of the monastery and take care of the poor, and he didn't know whether to leave Christ standing there. Should he go or should he stay? Should he slight this visitant celestial for the crowd of ragged bestial beggars at the convent gate? Would the blessed vision remain? Would the vision come again? And so he goes off and he takes care of the poor. At the gate, the poor were waiting, looking through the iron grating, with that terror in the eye of those who amid their wants and woes know the sound of doors that close and of steps that pass them by, grown familiar with disfavor, grown familiar with the savor of the bread by which men die, but today seem the convent gate to rise like the gate of paradise, like a sacrament divine, seemed to them the bread and wine. And so the monk stayed there working with the poor, but he was wondering, would the vision remain? And he looked back and he saw the convent bright with a supernatural light, like a luminous cloud expanding over floor and wall and ceiling. And finally he got back to his cell. And he paused with awestruck feeling at the threshold of the door, because the vision still was standing as he left it there before. Through the long hours intervening, it had waited his return, and he felt his bosom burn, comprehending all the meaning, when the blessed vision said, "Hadst thou stayed, I must have fled." And so I knew that I would join an order of friars or monks that took care of the poor. And that's exactly what I did, and it's exactly what I'm doing today. I know very well what it means. At the gate, the poor were waiting. I often let them in at night.
For information on the priesthood or religious life, log on to www.ewtn.com/religiouslife.